You're listening to Alcoholics Alive, where recovered members of Alcoholics Anonymous share their experience on how they live AA as a way of life. None of our participants get paid or speak for AA. Here are your hosts, Shank and Wayne. Welcome to Alcoholics Alive. As the intro already said, this is where recovered AA members come to share their experience, strength, and hope on how they live Alcoholics Anonymous as a way of life. So we're glad to be here. This is episode 1 of season 7. If you've listened to the previous 6 episodes, I know 3 or 4 of you have. We appreciate that. So season 7, we are actually going to cover the chapters in the big book from the doctor's opinion through Dr. Bob's nightmare. Many people leave out Dr. Bob's nightmare, but we're going to include that. And we figure we'd do that before the PLBB, the Plain Language Big Book, comes out and destroys the original text. That's a little joke and sarcasm for you. We are excited to have our guest. So our guest has been on before. She was actually on an episode, one of my favorite titles, Animals on a Treadmill. Now, none of us remember it, but we did look back through the archives, and that was the name of the episode. That was back in August of 2023. Mrs. Jones, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me back.
It's really good to have you back. Tell us a little bit about how you got to Alcoholics Anonymous.
I got to Alcoholics Anonymous by drinking a whole lot and then eventually not wanting to drink a whole lot and still drinking. And I had a moment of a little bit of clarity when my husband walked in on me as I was drinking right out of a bottle the morning I was to check in to detox. And he said, "Is that going to be your last drink?" And I thought, what? How? How does anyone have their last drink? And that question scared me into realizing that no matter how long I lock myself up in a facility, they're going to be out at some point, and I know where the store is. I cannot stop myself from picking up. And that realization cracked me open to being able to accept spiritual help. And that detox was right next to an AA meeting. And I wouldn't have gone otherwise. Like, it was not part of my plan, but they shuffled us on over there. And I heard you guys. I heard people talk about God and the steps in a book. And I just was in that space of being ready to believe and take action. And I've been around ever since. Thank God.
Well, that's convenient to have the AA group right next to the detox.
Right? What a weird, yeah.
Pretty clever
weird
for
coincidence.
That group.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. All right.
I mean, there's a liquor store not too far away too, but
covering all the bases.
Yeah, exactly.
That is perfect. All right. Well, thanks for that, Shank. What's our topic today?
Today, our topic is the doctor's opinion. As you said, we are starting in the doctor's opinion, and our episodes are going to be, the titles are going to be the chapters. And so I chose a reading here from the doctor's opinion, and here it is. Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. The sensation is so elusive that, while they admit it is injurious, they cannot after a time differentiate the true from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. They are restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience a sense of ease and comfort comfort, which comes at once by taking a few drinks, drinks which they see others taking with impunity. After they have succumbed to the desire again, as many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops, they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with the firm resolution not to drink again. This is repeated over and over, and unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there is very little hope of his recovery. That's on page XXVII. I.
28. Roman numeral 28.
I'm not too good with the Roman numerals, you know what I mean?
Most people under 42 aren't.
So I think that this is a really good reading from the chapter. And I personally remember when it was pointed out to me, and I'd been in AA for a while, just thinking that I drank for other reasons. So my question here is, what is the effect produced by alcohol?
Yeah. That it is an interesting question. And like the effect for me, it changed over the years. At first it was, I was able to relax and felt comfortable in my own skin, not so afraid. And I liked the buzz. I wanted to just be buzzed, like 0.08 all day would be fine, and I think I always knew that I drank for the effect, but I thought that I needed the effect because of you or my circumstances, or, I still was blaming other people, places, and things for the fact that I needed this effect, and it took me a while to realize that it didn't matter where I was or who I was with or what kind of mood I was in or all these things that I tried to control. I was still going to pick up that drink. I was powerless to stop myself from seeking that effect, even though towards the end, like, it wasn't a happy buzz anymore.
Yeah, I like the term restless, irritable, and discontent. Now, I wouldn't have known those words when I started drinking, nor did I'm one of those guys that they wrote the PLBB for with the fifth grade education. I might have a resentment over that. I'm probably need to.
Yeah, you keep sneaking that in.
I have to write. I may have to do some writing, Mrs. Jones. Will y'all listen to my inventory if I write it?
We will.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Write it at a fifth grade level, though.
Okay. I will try to do that.
So we can understand it.
Yeah.
It'll just come out that way. I wouldn't have, the terms I would have used would have been, I was just full of fear and felt out of place and was just like scared. And, when I drank that whiskey the first time around 12 or 13 years old, I mean, I remember it. The effect was incredible. Now, I wouldn't have known that wasn't the effect, but it made me feel different. Right? It made the fear and the doubt and the confusion go away. I immediately had all kinds of great ideas and felt powerful, and mostly I was uninhibited. I didn't have any fear at all. And it was incredible. And I mean, that's essentially why I drank. Now, later on, I would start thinking that I was drinking because of the circumstances in my life and the way I was raised. And, my dad moved me around a lot as a kid, and I had low self-esteem, and mama loved my brother more than she loved me. And, all that nonsense. But I would later learn that I drank like that because of the craving, the phenomenon of craving. That's why I continue to drink. But when I remember when this was first read to me, and it said we drink for the effect, I was like, God, yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the effect for me was electric.
Mm.
And I'm a guy that always, those first couple of drinks always worked. I, that's just kind of my experience. I never could stop there. I'm like Mrs. Jones. I'd like to get buzz
Mm-mm.
and get to this, but I never could. I'd overshoot the mark every time.
Mm-hmm.
I never just wanted to have a buzz. And I'm one of those people
That's because
where
you're hardcore, Shane.
where when I started drinking alcoholically, it was amazing. Like I blacked out and I'm sure I threw up and whatever and but like I got to be away from here for a while. And
Mm.
when I first got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I would tell you like, hey, if you had the life I had, if you grew up in the circumstances I did, which were very bad, horrible, um, you would drink the way I'm drinking. Now, I'm sure that there were times that I had, quote, fun drinking, but I'm not someone who, like, I do not relate where it's like, yeah, there were times where it was just so much fun and I didn't drink as much. And that's just not my experience. So the effect produced by alcohol for me was get blackout drunk as fast as possible. I didn't care if I was alone. I quite frankly didn't want to be out on the lake on the boat with friends and my boyfriend at the time because there was going to be a fight. I was going to slap him and he was going to throw me off the boat. And I was going to remember none of it, you know? So, um, the effect produced by alcohol for me was that I wasn't sitting there ruminating and thinking of how bad my life had been, things that I had done, not done, what am I going to do now? And the point for me was to black out as quickly as possible. So when I arrived here, I read this several times um, before it was pointed out to me in such a way very directly of like, hey, you know, uh, you can be here and have all of those circumstances and have all of those things that have happened in your life that you brought on or that you had no part in. But, if you're an alcoholic of this, that's not like you have a phenomenon of craving. And once you start,
Mm.
you're not choosing that. I mean, I really thought, no, I'm choosing to drink this much and black out so that I don't have to think about any of this stuff. Which I did even while I was blackout drunk because I would call everyone and tell them how horrible my life had been and cry and hang up and then turn my phone off or send them to voicemail, So it wasn't working the way I thought it was working, in fact. But the effect was just that like I got to not think about anything, not be responsible for anything. I didn't feel responsible for what I did when I was in a blackout. I would feel remorseful, the well-known stages of a spree. Yes, although I did not have a firm resolution to never drink again. I had a firm resolution to go to work 12, 13 hours, and then
Blackout again.
do it again. Do it again, man.
Hmm.
Isn't that interesting the way like the measurables can really differ among us, but what we have in common is can't control it and can't abstain.
Yep.
I desperately did not want to black out. I wanted to pace myself. And you can imagine how well I did at that. But I believed that I was better with clients when I had a few drinks, probably a better driver when I've had a few drinks, like all this nonsense that, I probably fundamentally disagreed with, but believed in my own head, to get me to continue to pick up. And I didn't realize what I was experiencing was the phenomenon of craving that, that I once I have that first drink, there goes the day. I thought like just a little to take the edge off at lunch. And then, I can wait 5 hours for the next drink at dinner. No, I couldn't. And then I would feel like I changed my mind. Well, I just changed my mind. This is working so well. Why not go grab another bottle. When really none of it was up to me. I wasn't making those choices. I just was responding to this phenomenon of craving I couldn't mentally override.
Hmm. I got a lot of experience with repeating it over and over and over. I mean, I would get into trouble or stay gone for a few days and make all kinds of promises to my wife or to my boss, and I would mean that when I would,
Mm,
I mean, I was really going to try to do the right thing the next day, and I would start drinking, and once I started, that was it. I'd end up somewhere I wasn't supposed to be, or I'd come to the next morning not quite remember what happened the night before. I'd make more promises, and then I would get like real like paranoid, and like the heat would be on me, like I was waiting for somebody to come get me, and that would fade off after a couple hours after I realized nobody was actually coming to get me, and then I would start drinking again. And it was just this vicious cycle. And then that's when you get to that like place there, that's when people would ask you like, well, why do you drink like that, or why do you do what you do? And the only logical answer is, I don't know. I mean, I really didn't know. I was because I didn't
mm,
intend to do that. I mean, I intended to show up on time, or I intended to come
mm.
home, and I just once I started, I couldn't do it. So
Yeah,
yeah, I identified with this immediately when it was read to me.
So,
right.
so when did y'all realize that you drink for the effect produced and not because of all of these other circumstances or things that were going on in your life? Was it after you got sober and it was explained to you, or were there times in your drinking that maybe you knew that?
There were times in my drinking that I kind of knew that, but I was able to blot it out. Like, nah, that can't be true. I remember, so for years, I worked in an industry where it's very common to drink. I was surrounded by people who drink and bottles all around me, and so it was very much part of the culture. And I left, changed careers, and to a completely different environment, one in which there's none of the staff are partiers, there's no bottles around. And I thought that'll fix me. And in less than a week, I was sneaking, alcohol on my lunch break. And before my first week was up, I was just bringing it with me and hiding it behind my computer monitor. And I remember thinking, uh-oh, like this is probably not good. Like I don't get to blame it on other people anymore. And I just quickly brushed that thought away. Like, nah, it's childhood then. And it still has to be someone else's fault because the truth that I'm drinking because I'm powerless not to, that's just too scary. I don't want to think like that, you know. It really
Hmm.
wasn't until I came in, and truly realized like, oh, I'm just fucked. Like, the notion that we're powerless. I thought for a long time that the secret ingredient that would get me to stop drinking would be a desire to stop drinking. I'm just drinking because I want to. And once I want to stop, I'll stop. And when I finally got the desire to stop and had all the reasons to stop and continued to drink, that was really confusing. All my excuses were taken away, like you were saying. Like the truth is, I don't know why I'm picking up that first one.
Yeah, I didn't know any of this until was sitting in detox and ended up talking to some AA members. But I mean, I made a lot of attempts prior to coming to Alcoholics Anonymous to like get my life in order and sometimes to stop drinking, but it was always more of today's just a day I'm gonna do better. And I didn't know I had alcoholism. I mean, I often wondered like what the heck's wrong with me. And so it wasn't until I basically surrendered without really even any knowledge of AA or what alcoholism was, and was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous and to the book that I kind of found all this out. But I'm a guy that when I read the book and when the book was read to me, it immediately made sense. I know not everyone has that experience, but I'm like, that is me. When they talked about doing this stuff over and over, having a resolution, not do it again, and then doing it, that's what I did. When they talk about, you know, the strange mental blank spots and you just kind of invariably turn to taking a drink, I understood that. When it talks about the insanity of the first drink, I got out of the hospital that one time and knew I would never drink again. And 3 days later, I was drinking with the idea that if I ate some Slim Jims before I drank beer, it'd be all right.
That's solid plan.
The book calls that plain insanity. That's the insanity of the first drink, the mental obsession.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize it until I was introduced to the book.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your next question, Shank? Go ahead, Mrs. Jones.
I was just going to say, one of the best descriptions of this cycle that I heard was, I drank until I had to stop, and I stopped until I had to drink. And it's like, oh yeah, that's what I did, although mine was daily, but each night I would be like, I'm not going to do this tomorrow. And then I would wake up thinking, probably going to do it. I need to do it. I need a drink.
Make a big deal out of nothing.
Right? Yeah, exactly. What was I so worried about?
Is there a specific time in your drinking that explains this passage? Like a story, maybe right before you got sober, or maybe not, but that you can directly say, yeah, that's exactly what happened there.
A couple examples of specifically this phenomenon of craving. And this is years before I made it into the rooms, but the day of my wedding, I did not want to miss a thing. I wanted to be present. I knew I would drink at the reception, but I didn't want to miss a single moment. I had no fear or doubt about the man I was marrying. But they give you champagne when they're doing your hair and makeup a couple hours before the ceremony. And I vaguely remember walking down the aisle thinking, these shoes, I should have just walked in them. I was stumbling down the aisle and I'm like, wait, it's got to be the shoes. But then I remember standing at the altar just thinking, I'm a little, and I had no intention of being out of it. Another, and this is just hindsight, because I didn't know that non-alcoholics experience alcohol differently. But,
yes.
As mentioned, I would drink on the job, and that's not a requirement to be an alcoholic. Not everyone does that. But I remember one time my boss surprised me by taking me out to lunch, and he's a nice man, and he took me to a nice lunch to let me know he's giving me a promotion and a raise. And I was sitting there just crawling out of my skin because I had to sip an iced tea for an hour, and I'd already snuck a few drinks at my desk. And I remember thinking, like, why am I so uncomfortable right now? Like, this is good news. It's pleasant conversation. Like, everything should be fine. And yet I gotta go, like I need to go grab that bottle again. Why? Why is it so uncomfortable to have my buzz wear off? A normal person can do that, and it was just, I just remember being really confused, and it wasn't until years later I was like, oh, that's why. A normal person can have a few drinks and then switch activities without discomfort. And for me, I kick off that phenomenon of craving. Don't you dare get between me and the bottle.
Yeah.
Um,
It's never made sense to me, those folks that can just drink a few and then go on and do something else or just, stop
yeah,
or
yeah,
I've
yeah.
got so many.
Weirdos.
Yeah, they're very weird. Yeah. We should start calling them weirdos instead of what do they use? Normies? Is
Normies.
that
Yeah.
normies? Yeah.
Normies.
Yeah.
Uh,
Weirdos. I've got so many examples of this. I mean, the one that popped in my head was I desperately needed a job. I'd gotten discharged out of the Air Force
mm,
and had attempted suicide at this point 3 times. No, 2 times. This was just before the third suicide attempt. But I had this job interview, and I was determined to get there. And
mm,
I had stayed sober like the day before, and I went up the next day. This was the day before the interview. I went up to, I don't know, get a pack of cigarettes or something at a convenience store, and a friend of mine was there, and I think I've told this story before. He was like going to pay his electric bill or something. It was something very simple and like trivial. And he asked me if I wanted to go. And I said, yeah, I'll go ride with you, but I need to come back. I got a job interview in the morning. And he had some beer in the car, and I told him I didn't want one. And then I finally just gave in. I was like, yeah, I'll take one. And we started drinking, and we ended up in a dorm at a local college, a female dorm, and I came to the next morning and missed the job interview. I had all intentions of going to the job interview. I had all intentions of just riding with him wherever he was going and coming straight home. But once I started drinking, that was it. I was off to the races.
mhm.
Well, why did he do that to you?
That's a good
You
question.
told him you needed to go to the
So,
interview.
yeah.
Sounds
If
like
he
his
was a
fault.
real friend, he sounds toxic.
Oh, he's
Yes.
toxic.
You should,
Mhm.
the problem was you didn't have firm boundaries.
That's right.
That's it. Y'all are getting me all triggered up here. Come on now. Oh, but things like that would happen. I wish I had better boundaries back then.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I know. Now you know.
Man.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't necessarily, I mean, there are a lot of times in my drinking that I don't know. I can't really say that I drink more than I wanted to or intended to. Now, I'm sure that there were times like that, maybe. I don't know, but um I could really hold it together to go to work and to do my job. I mean, I would be hungover, like probably still drunk some
Mm,
Saturday or Sunday mornings, but um because I knew like the way that I quote controlled my drinking was I planned everything around it. So I knew
mm,
when I started drinking, like I knew that I wouldn't be able to stop. In the last several months of my drinking, you know, I knew I would get up in the morning. I would have the shakes, and I thought that was because I hadn't had coffee yet. But that was real. I'm like, well, what I'm gonna do is start setting the coffee to be ready by the time I get up. And it wasn't until a long time in AA that someone related their story of, having the shakes in the morning of withdrawal. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like maybe that's what was happening to me. But I knew like I would have some coffee and I would pretend. I really would get the dishwasher going, put some laundry in, and like my family member that I lived with, we just thought it was hilarious. I would do quote drunk cleaning, drunk showering, drunk everything and just pass out, wake up, continue. She would get off work, she'd join
mm.
in. And I guess that was the way that I quote controlled it in the last several months of my drinking, but that's pretty much what it always looked like. I knew that once I started drinking, all bets were off, but you couldn't have told me that I wasn't making that decision, I guess.
Yeah.
Mm.
Because I knew that, I was just like, oh, well, I'm going to be off work all day today. I'll pretend to do some stuff. I'll go to the pool. I'll pass out, whatever, it's fine. Um, and I did believe that that was fine. I think at some point during my sobriety, someone close to me, I would talk about how when I started drinking alcoholically, it was with a boyfriend who we lived in East Tennessee. He had access. He went right up the mountain and got moonshine, and I thought that was amazing. And I kind of tell that story in a way of like, well, yeah, he knew how to drink. I drank with him. He drank a lot. He had all the parties. His parents had a pool. They had all this property. Their family like ran the town essentially. And someone came up to me after and said, "Hey, like he didn't make you an alcoholic." And like I didn't know that it sounded that way. I don't think I was trying to say that.
Yeah.
But since then I do always make sure to say like, "Hey, it's not that man's fault." I was drinking, the way that I was drinking because it was a release for me. It was something that I was like, "Oh man, I feel like I can kind of take a breath, not think about anything for a while." So I think, for me it was more I don't remember ever having that resolution to not drink or not drink as much. I was always going to have a couple of drinks before going to the dinner, to the tailgate, to the bar, to the wherever. That was just that was like obvious.
Mm,
Of course I'm
yeah.
going to do that.
Well, you're covered then at the top of the paragraph where it says we can't differentiate the true from the false.
Cannot.
The
No,
alcoholic
Yeah.
life
true.
seems the only the
Yeah.
alcoholic life seems the only normal one.
That's
Yeah.
right. Cannot. And I when I was going around making amends to people that I grew up with and, that I drank with, whatever, even in the last several years, I still have family that live in East Tennessee. And so I get to see some of those friends. And, there are stories of like, there's a story where me and some friends went out on this little John boat and we were just hanging out. Everyone had their own case of beer. And I knew that I wouldn't be able to drink the way I wanted to. And so I was pouring the beer. This is embarrassing. I was pouring the beers out over the side of the boat. Like I didn't drink at all. And the whole case of beer was gone. And everyone else hadn't like had their entire case of beer. And they're like, "Susie, oh my God. Like, how did you do that? How are you functioning? How are you okay?" And I remember they wouldn't let me drive. And I was just like, okay, I shouldn't have like, okay, like I overshot in my pretending to drink because I really
You
knew that like I wouldn't be able to drink the way I wanted to. And it's so bizarre because a friend of mine brought that up to me. She's like, "Do you remember that day we were on Tellico Lake and da 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 da?" And I was like, "Dude, I have to tell you something. It's really I actually didn't drink that day." And so of course now she just is like, "What kind of alcoholic like does that?" And I'm like, "Dude, I don't know."
It is a good question.
I mean, I got blackout when we got back to the house. That didn't take too long. But
Okay.
I love how your embarrassing story is like, how dare you dump alcohol outside?
oh, 100%.
Yeah,
I'm so ashamed of it. I'm just like
right.
that.
You should be.
Wow.
I remember I would like think I'm going to moderate my drinking, and I remember like I would wake up and find that there's only half a bottle of wine in the house. So think, okay, good, because that's all I'm going to drink. And then I would think we probably need kitty litter or milk. And so I better go to the store. And then I'd go to the store and, oh, you get 10% off if you buy 6 bottles of wine. And, and I would do all of that before I'd even drink any of that half bottle because I knew I didn't like, I think I somehow internally knew without really realizing it that, yeah, 2 glasses of wine sucks. Like that just sucks.
Yeah.
It hurts more than being sober.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I'm going to have backup in the house at all times.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, it's funny how everybody's different because that whole thing of like if you only got a few, it's not enough for me. I'm not going to drink. Damn if I wouldn't. If there was just one, I'm going to drink that, and then I'm going to pray for a Budweiser truck to show up, or I'm going to walk across town to find something. Yeah, that's just not me. I'd fight you for one, and then go find another.
I was just never without. I would drive
Well, you're lucky.
The extra car, the Ford Explorer Eddie Bauer edition, and I would drive that to the liquor store. They knew me. We had an account, and they would load up. They would load up, like cases of liquor, and I'd drive it on up to the barn, and I would hide a few, obviously, because everyone else I was drinking with also drank a lot. So, but like I always knew that there's alcohol somewhere all the time. Alcohol, cartons of cigarettes. I mean,
That's
ready
right.
to go.
That's right. Yeah. Hey, interesting to note here. So, according to the doctor,
The
and
doctor.
for everyone listening, the doctor is William Silkworth, and he was a guy that was a non-alcoholic person that really helped Alcoholics Anonymous get started and helped Bill Wilson and many others get sober. But he says if you're in this state that he's describing here, that the only way to get over it is what he calls a psychic change. And he did a lot to help people overcome the idea that alcoholism was just like a moral issue. And if you read in the doctor's opinion, there's lots of other good information in there, but he also is kind of credited for saying, hey, some of these folks that are alcoholic type can't get better through psychiatry or, just leaning on their morals or principles, that it took more of a spiritual approach. So I guess the good news is if you've had a psychic change, you can recover from alcoholism.
Yep.
I'm sure psychic change is going to get rewritten or back up, translated. Remember, it's a translation. It's not a rewrite.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
What's
Psychic change.
What's a fifth grade word for psychic? I'm not
That's a good
looking
question,
anything
Mrs.
up right
Jones.
now.
More will be revealed.
Inexplicable.
Inexplicable.
Yeah. Oh man. Oh, telepathy or clairvoyance. Yeah, that's not what we're talking about.
It's kind of changed. It's kind of changed, hasn't it?
Yes. Well, and to be fair, like the first time I read this, the phrase psychic change confused me. Like, what is he talking about? And it's really just what the book later calls spiritual experience, spiritual awakening. Right. It's described in different ways, but it is something that happens through a force beyond human aid, and that has completely reorganized my attitude, my outlook upon life. Like, I now have a sound mind around alcohol, which means I would no more pick it up than I would run into traffic.
Right.
And call it whatever you want, man. It's real, and I could not stop drinking without it.
Mm-hmm. So that's what the 12 steps are designed to do, is to help produce the psychic change or personality change or spiritual experience.
Yep.
Yeah. I think he even goes on to say that he gives two examples of where two people he treated that he never thought was going to make it.
Yep.
And then a year later, he would see these folks after they've applied the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous, and he didn't even recognize them.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just say that I am grateful that it is not a prerequisite to understand anything in this book to get and stay sober. I still at times I'm like, how did I get here? And it's through the power of Alcoholics Anonymous and people that showed up to me and helped me and related their experiences to me. My drinking didn't look the same. My sobriety hasn't looked the same as many people, but yet we're still sober through the same program. So
yeah,
there are times I read stuff in the big book even today, and I'm like, do I understand what that means? I don't know. Like, I can always delve in deeper, and I love that about AA, is that I don't have to have a certain amount of education to get and stay sober. The doctor's opinion to me, I think I can't fully to me, I'm sure I would have just skipped over it. Like, I don't care what a doctor has to say. I didn't grow up going to the doctor. I don't know. I can't relate. Do not care. Sometimes I can still feel that way. Like, is this a MD doctor or someone with a doctorate degree that's going to tell me that I'm dumb? You know? So I'm just glad that I can be here and no one can tell me I can't.
Right? If you do still have trouble understanding stuff in this book, I have some good news for you. Apparently, there's going to be a new version coming out. Sorry.
There is.
Sorry.
Yep. We've already pre-ordered ours. That's
pre-PLBB.
Yeah.
Pre-PLBB. Pre-PLBB.
And to your point about like how Silkworth describes, to alcoholics that, he came to think were hopeless and then gets to see them recover. Also in the beginning of this chapter, I love how he says that Bill Wilson was a type I had come to regard as hopeless, and we know Bill recovered. So it's like, yeah, being hopeless is a good thing, because without that realization, I wouldn't have reached out for the hope that is spiritual. Like, I wouldn't have been interested at all in your little life preserver.
Yeah. Yeah, AA works really well for folks that believe they're hopeless.
Right?
Yeah.
True.
Yep. Shank, you want to move on to meeting shrapnel?
Meeting shrapnel.
Uh-oh.
Here we go. Our segment of lore, myth, and sayings frequently heard in AA. Our first meeting shrapnel is 7 days without a meeting makes 1 week. What do you think about that, Miss Jo?
It's so clever. It has to be true.
Mm-hmm.
Just kidding.
Well, hold on now.
Just kidding.
Little double entendre there.
Right?
How are you spelling the word week?
That's the thing, though. Get it? Because it can be W-E-A-K or W-E-E-K, and then your mind is supposed to be blown. I bet the first person who ever said that was like, I cannot wait to unload this.
Well, here's the thing too, is I'm wondering if I have heard this and been like, duh. Yeah, not even considered the alternate meeting. Like, I bet I've heard this and was just like, well, yeah, 7 days of the week. Hello.
Oh my goodness.
The thing is, it's like well, I don't have to explain it, but
explain it.
It makes it okay. It makes it sound like, okay, what's the alternative? 7 days of meetings makes one strong.
That's right.
There you go.
No, it doesn't. Right? Like, no, it doesn't. And by the way, I think of far more importance is the one-on-one I get to have with the alcoholic who's still sick. And that's, we go to meetings to be helpful, not because we're going to drink during that hour otherwise. And so it's just it's just misguided, like, I wouldn't tell a newcomer to go to meetings, but at the same time, meeting dependence is a shaky place to be.
Yeah. 7 days without a meeting makes 1 week.
Well, to your point, if the alternative is true, then, there should never be a drunk person in a meeting.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
And we encourage people like, hey, yeah, go talk to people. You can be at meetings if you are in groups, if you've been drinking.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. First 2 meetings I ever went to, I was drunk. I could not have left the house any other way.
Well, you
And-
obviously didn't do 7 days.
yeah. But and it also, like, you know, practicing these principles in all of our affairs is important, including at home. When I first came in, I went to a Shings, and I remember like bragging to my sponsor, "I'm going to meetings every single day." And she goes, "Oh, when are you spending time with your husband?" And I'm like, "Wait, what?"
Who?
And
That guy?
yeah, who? Yeah. And it took me a minute to be like, oh, like I was neglecting him. And that's not, that's not good.
No, it's not.
So it's like, I heard someone in a meeting not too long ago. It was really cool because he was talking about that, being overly involved in the fellowship, but not taking the steps. And he said, he goes, meeting makers make it. All that meeting making made me a terrible husband and father. I was like, oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it implies if you don't go to a meeting, well, I guess not every day, but if you not been to a meeting in a week, you're in trouble.
Right. Exactly.
I was thinking, I'm wondering if I've ever actually been 7 days without going to a meeting. I think I have a few times when I was traveling. So I guess I was on shaky ground and thin ice and didn't.
And
even
how'd
know
you feel?
I guess
Probably pretty
terrible.
weak.
Yeah, I was pretty weak.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Do
Yeah, I
y'all
guess-
want to keep it or scrap it?
Mrs. Jones.
Scrap it. Do we have the power, like, once we say that, like, it's never going to be uttered again?
Yes. Correct.
Is that
right.
how this works?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
It's a big responsibility.
it is. Once we scrap it, it's gone.
It's gone.
No one
Okay.
can say it.
What do you think, Wayne?
I'm scrapping it.
It's
What
out of
about you?
here. It is
All right.
out of here.
Wow.
Our next meeting shrapnel is service is God's rock tumbler.
Never heard this. What? Okay, what's rock tumbling in this?
It polishes them up. If you have a rock tumbler, it wears away all the jagged edges.
Yes.
And makes a very beautiful, slick, round, polished, beautiful rock.
So, service, God smoothing me out. Like what? No,
Listen,
I'm really
I-
Like
confused
a-
because I've never heard this one before.
Like a hairless cat.
I heard someone say it. A
Thank
few
you for
weeks
putting
ago.
it in terms I can understand.
You're welcome.
I actually heard somebody say this a few weeks ago. Service is
Wow.
God's rock tumbler. So I've got the same questions. I guess service made them polished and smooth, or service helped them get rid of their jagged edges. I don't know.
That has not been my experience.
No, man, it makes you mean and
Yeah.
like
Have you? Yeah.
judgmental.
Can I read you something from the AA group pamphlet?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Titles in AA do not bring authority or honor. They describe services and responsibilities. And it has generally been found that giving members service positions solely to help them stay sober does not work.
What?
Yeah, it's in
Oh.
print.
You
In a
mean it's not
pamphlet.
gonna-
So
Is
we don't
that
give-
is that AA approved and sanctioned service material?
yes.
Whoa. We don't give people
got
service
this-
positions to get them involved, to help them out because they really need it.
I think the group comes first. Hold on, wait, let me keep reading to be sure. Okay. solely to help them stay sober does not work. Instead, the group's welfare is of primary concern in choosing officers.
Yep.
Wow. I could have used that a while ago.
Yep.
Now I know.
Well,
I got to scrap it based on that reading alone. I mean,
I think so.
How could we
Yeah.
ever keep it? Come on.
Yeah, right? God has
I don't
other rock
know.
tumblers, doesn't he?
I don't know. This kind of feels good, though. I mean, it kind of pulled
Feelings
on my
aren't
heartstrings.
facts.
That's right.
Mrs. Jones. Really? They are not. You're right. Okay, I'm scrapping it.
I can't tell the true from the false, so I don't know now.
There
Right.
you go. Sounds
right.
like you're in the well-known stages of a spree.
Probably, and I wouldn't even know.
Yeah.
Who? Wait, well known to who?
Ah,
Shit.
The rock tumbler.
Sorry.
y'all are
I'm
scrapping
scrapping
it?
Yep. What are you doing, Shank?
Hey,
It's out of here.
All right. What's
Our
the next
third
one?
shrapnel is pigeon meeting.
Shh.
Or just pigeon. Perhaps.
just the
Um,
term pigeon.
Yeah. This specifically, when it was heard, was talking about a pigeon meeting.
Mm.
So this is when, like, a group of people that, like, are sponsored under somebody, they all get
Lineage.
together for the
Mm.
pigeon meeting. So it would be like
Trace your
if
lineage to Bill Wilson.
It would be like if Mrs. Jones had 13 people that she sponsored, they would call those 13 people pigeons, and then Mrs. Jones would have a pigeon meeting
Mhm.
at a location, and they would call it a pigeon meeting.
Gotcha.
It's very
And I
popular
would-
in certain areas of the country. The term is.
It's kind of gross.
It is very gross. It's creepy. It's culty.
It's culty. Yeah, the idea that, because it brings about like an idea of like hierarchy, or like one person is wiser than another who leads this flock of people. And that's not at all what happens, in sponsorship. It's, we meet as equals and shoulder to shoulder, and we don't place our dependence on another human being or try to like present anyone as morally superior to another,
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like forget even setting aside any derogatory terms like pigeon, just the idea of like me and all my sponsees are getting together and, like, I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have fallen prey, not to the pigeon meeting, but to the tree meeting. I
Mm.
got sober where I still live. It was the tree meeting, and it was fun. A big group of women would get together, and it was the tree meeting, the family tree. And I was in it. I had a sponsor and a grand sponsor and a great grand sponsor, and here are all my sponsees, and y'all need to be sponsoring other people and bring them to this tree meeting, and this is what we do. This is what we need to do. And you know what? Some people get and stay sober that way and feel very like it's their family, and that's fine. But the pigeon meeting and I don't know, when it
Yeah.
was pointed out to me by some people like, hey, we'd actually, who were in my lineage at that time, like, hey, we don't like that actually. We don't, don't call me that. Do not call me your grand sponsor. That's weird.
Yeah.
But you know what? That is kind of weird actually.
It's kind of weird. Like, I actually like, I mean, I feel like fellow AA members are family, and I feel a sense of connectedness to people that I've worked with or people they've worked with. But just the idea of hierarchy, or like anyone is more important than another, is, or like, oh, have you heard this one? In our lineage, we do it this way. It's like, oh, come on. I actually get a kick out of it when someone I've sponsored sponsors one of their sponsees, like just a slightly different way, or they have a different take on something. And I'm like, cool. Like that's kind of how it should be. We can use the same directions, but have different experiences. We don't have to be so rigid about it.
I've had an overcorrection, we'll say, in the last several years.
You have had an overcorrection. Yeah. I've never liked the term pigeon. I mean, I know that's been around forever. And I think even in like Dr. Bob and the Old Timers and Bill Wilson's story, they refer to that term a little bit, but the whole pigeon meeting and the sponsorship lineage, to me, it does. It shows like a hierarchy, or it's almost like mafia or a gang. You know, you got these leaders, and I got to go to this guy to get information or to get the okay. And I've actually been accused of that stuff. I've never participated in any of it, but people under you, people that you sponsor, will like say stuff, and I've
heard stories about you, Weaver.
I have literally had people that changed sponsors because I wouldn't have what they call a tree meeting.
Oh,
Yeah.
They really wanted their tree.
They wanted the tree meeting, and I refused to do it because of the reasons we've talked about.
Yeah.
We got to go somewhere else.
Can I tell you something?
I've been at a tree meeting where you made an appearance, Wayne.
I did make an appearance on some traditions, I think.
So don't let him lie to you.
I did, but that was not mine. I was asked to come talk.
You were in the tree.
I was not
however.
responsible. I was not responsible for the meeting.
You can't say no to an AA request.
Oh, that's right. See there? Thanks, Mrs.
That's
Jones.
why you were there.
Miss Jones has got my back.
You were the roots of the tree.
You were the roots.
You were the
trunk.
tap
Oh my
root.
God.
The taproot, yeah.
I think, well, pigeon's bad enough, but have you guys heard babies?
Oh, yeah. I told you.
My babies.
No, Wayne was just telling me about this recently. I said I can't. I don't know that I could deal with
I
that.
tell all my babies, don't put me on a pedestal. We won't. Don't worry about it.
Oh, yeah. That's making a comeback, babies.
How about let's just start using kittens?
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, see, now that's okay.
There's something there. There's something there.
Yeah, there's something there.
Or puppies.
Mhm.
No, okay, this is a real one that I heard of, like your sponsee sisters, or what, brothers, or that are sponsored by the same person. They are your litter mates.
No.
Yes. Yeah.
Litter mates. Oh my goodness.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, do
I
y'all
heard
want
that one
to
recently.
keep the pigeon or scrap the pigeon?
Scrap it.
Pigeon meeting's got to get scrapped.
It's out of here.
Stop
3
using
for
it.
3.
We made a lot of stuff happen.
Man, we are reorganizing stuff. I'll tell you,
Yeah. Yep.
we're having that psychic change is kicking in.
That's right.
All right, Mrs. Jones, we appreciate you coming on and sharing your experience with us.
Absolutely.
If you're listening, check out Mrs. Jones's Instagram page. We don't promote stuff, but it's my favorite meme page. It's called "The Wisdom to Know the Kittens" on the gram. It's an awesome page. And if you're thinking about reading a doctor's opinion, it's not on page 1 in the book. A lot of people go directly to a book and start on page 1. It's the chapter before page 1. It's a Roman numeral. I don't remember exactly where. Well, hold on. I got a book right here. Let me help you out real quick.
25.
Mrs. Jones knows. Now we're going to get crap shanked for not starting at the preface. Oh no, the blank page.
The blank page.
The blank page.
This is what you know.
This is what you know.
Yeah, we're going to get in trouble for not starting.
Oh, God.
So the doctor's opinion starts on XXV, which is Roman numeral 25, and there's a lot of really good information on there if you're alcoholic. So read the doctor's opinion and be free.
Freedom.
Thanks for listening. If you have a comment, suggestion, or just need help, you can email Shank and Wayne at freedom@alcoholicsalive.com. Remember, we're recovered members of Alcoholics Anonymous, but we do not speak for Alcoholics Anonymous, nor do we get paid. Join us next week for another great episode.